welcome to PC Jack. Back in 2020, Guerrilla Games finally brought Horizon Zero Dawn to PC, and while the port was fairly troublesome when it was released, with a lot of problems with bugs and performance issues, the game is in a much more polished state now after 16 months, and it's much more highly regarded than it was at first. But as of December 8th, Guerrilla Games have finally implemented DLSS and Fidelity FX Super Resolution into Horizon Zero Dawn, which now offers a fairly significant performance boost. Now, while DLSS and Fidelity Super Resolution, or FSR for short, are not the exact same type of technology, they do offer some interesting results when it comes to upscaling and are really useful when trying to achieve higher frame rates at higher resolutions. And most importantly, performance gains while maintaining image quality at the same time. So, seeing as Horizon Zero Dawn is one of my favourite games to play, I thought it'd be interesting to take a look and see how well the implementation of DLSS and FSR has worked for this game, and what settings you could think about using depending on the type of hardware you have. In today's testing, we're going to see what sort of performance gains we can get with Horizon Zero Dawn's built-in benchmark, and see what sort of visual fidelity loss there is when we're actually in-game. All of today's testing has been done on my daily system, which features an RTX 3080, a Ryzen 9 3900 XT, and 32GB of 3200 speed memory. So, to start, let's take a look at the in-game benchmarks. In order to establish a baseline, running the game at a native 4K resolution with no upscaling whatsoever, the RTX 3080 is able to maintain a consistent 60 frames per second with an average of 75 FPS and 1% lows just above the 60 FPS threshold at 63 FPS. Now, when we take a look at both DLSS quality and FSR Ultra quality, both upscaling options see a pretty similar performance increase, but with DLSS taking the lead with a 28% increase to performance, and FSR trailing pretty closely behind with a 25% increase, but both options are still a pretty substantial boost over native 4K. Moving on to DLSS balance and FSR quality, FSR actually wins this round with a slim lead over DLSS, offering 37% more FPS over native. It's worth noting that these options so far are pretty much neck and neck, and in-game you'd probably be really hard pressed to even spot the difference to performance. So the selection here will probably depend on what your hardware allows you to use and how much visual fidelity is maintained at these less aggressive upscaling options. Now, taking a look at DLSS performance and FSR balanced, FSR again takes the lead with an increase of 44%. However, while DLSS sees a lesser increase of 40% over native, our 1% lows are a little bit more favourable when using DLSS performance over FSR balanced, which seems to be fairly prevalent as we begin using these much more aggressive upscaling options, which is also important to note, will now much more noticeably affect in-game visuals. Finally, using the most aggressive upscaling options with DLSS Ultra Performance and FSR Performance, while both options offer identical averages at 111 FPS, an increase of nearly 50% to performance. Again, our 1% lows are much more favourable to DLSS, offering much greater frame time consistency over FSR. So overall, some really impressive performance gains even when using more quality focused options. But are there any discernible differences to image quality depending on which options we use? To find out, let's jump into some Horizon Zero Dawn gameplay and take a look ourselves. Okay, so jumping into some Horizon Zero Dawn, I'm running this now at 4K ultimate settings, and I currently have no upscaling options actually enabled. And it's worth noting that I'm actually capturing this off the same system I am playing this game on, so there will be a slight drop to our FPS, but we've already checked our FPS using the in-game benchmark, so this is more important to see a rough idea of performance, but most importantly, the actual image differences between the upscaling options. So as you see, we're currently running with no upscaling enabled on this, and we are just sitting around 60 FPS below. And what we're going to do now is we'll switch it up to DLSS quality and see what sort of difference we can see. There we go. So enabling DLSS quality, there is no actual perceptible difference in my opinion to the actual image quality, and it does offer a fairly significant boost to performance, as we're now sitting around 70 odd FPS. And if we were to switch to FSR quality, we should still see similar results. And now we're using FSR quality, which to me looks exactly the same, and we're still sitting around the same FPS, which is good. So if you were dependent on either options, like you only had an AMD compatible graphics card to be able to play this with FSR enabled, and no NVIDIA graphics card to use DLSS, you could easily get away with using FSR instead. So, yep, in my opinion, these two quality settings look perfectly fine in my opinion. Where we are going to see some issues with image quality is when we go to more aggressive upscaling options like DLSS Ultra Performance or FSR Performance, so let's take a look at how those look. So with DLSS Ultra Performance, we can see a pretty huge boost to our FPS. But if we take a look at Aloy here, we can see there is some issues with pixelations and ghosting on the actual character model of her, which in my opinion does not really look good at all. And even though we are getting a significant increase to our performance, I do feel like this lack of visual fidelity maintained is not for me personally. But let's see how it looks if we dropped onto the most aggressive options for FSR. Here we go, so we've got FSR performance enabled now. In my opinion, it does look a little bit better than Ultra Performance, but again, it's still not the best as we can see some blurring going on. And while the performance again is pretty much neck and neck with DLSS Ultra Performance, I do feel like this is a little bit sharper, but to me it's still too extreme to push the actual upscaling option too. But is there a difference if we try and go for something a little bit more balanced? Okay, so still maintaining significant performance and running with NVIDIA DLSS performance, we are getting decent performance, and the image quality, while not as clear as using quality, is actually substantially better than Ultra Performance, and I gotta be honest, I could actually play it like this. And if you were running on lower end hardware that couldn't actually manage to achieve 60 FPS with quality enabled, then performance mode could be a suitable option. While Ultra Performance will offer less image clarity, performance should be a decent compromise between the two. In my opinion though, the actual performance gains that you can see with just DLSS quality or FSR Ultra quality enabled are really substantial. And while I've tested this using an RTX 3080, I still feel that on slightly lower end hardware you could see similar results, but you've just got to take your time and try out each of the upscaling options available to you to see what suits you best, as for me quality could look good, but to the other person it could be a complete mess. So you just got to go through and figure out what suits you best and what looks the best depending on your hardware configuration. Oh, we're going to try and kill this? Come on, let's try and kill this thing. Oh no, I died. I did say it's one of my favorite games. I didn't say I was particularly good at playing this game, but there you go. So, in conclusion, while Horizon Zero Dawn had a fairly troublesome launch, it's clear that Guerrilla Games have put a lot of effort into perfecting the game and maintaining it after it launched in such a troubled state. But from what we've seen with the benchmarks and the in-game captures, what sort of settings should you use in order to maintain performance and visual fidelity? Well, as usual, it's going to depend on what hardware you use. While the RTX 3080 is perfectly capable of driving 4K 60 FPS plus, enabling DLSS quality or FSR Ultra quality will give you a significant performance boost while still maintaining imperceptible differences to visual fidelity, with the addition of a near 30% increase to performance, which means there's very little reason not to use these options. So either using DLSS quality on an RTX 3080, 3080 Ti, an RTX 3090, or even an RTX 3070 if you can drop some graphics settings is a very worthwhile option in order to get a free boost to performance and not lose any visual fidelity. Or the equivalent on the AMD side, if you have something like an RX 6800 XT or an RX 6900 XT, enabling FSR Ultra quality is a great option to get a free boost. But where the lines begin to blur, quite literally, is when using DLSS Ultra Performance or FSR Performance, which offers a near 50% performance increase, but at the cost of image quality being pretty horrible. So unless you are on really low-end hardware, I would try and avoid using these settings if possible. My best advice, if this situation applies to you, is to try and aim for using performance mode on DLSS or FSR balanced, which is a fine compromise between a boost of performance and not too much loss to image clarity. Overall, I have to say that the implementations of DLSS and FSR in Horizon Zero Dawn is one of the best uses of this upscaling technology that I've ever seen in any game. And while these technologies are extremely useful in helping gamers running at 4K resolutions or even more budget gamers that are running at lower resolutions but struggling to reach 60 FPS, this is much more beneficial than something like ray tracing, which is much more prevalent on the market. And I would like to see these technologies pushed even further. And while it's clear that DLSS still holds a lead over FSR due to a longer time in development, due to the open source nature of FSR, we could start to see more titles actually make use of this compared to DLSS, depending on whether game developers want to use this in their titles. And the implications of them deciding between these two technologies is something I'm really excited to see. So that's it for today's video. Have you tried out either DLSS or FSR in Horizon Zero Dawn yet? Let me know down in the comments below and what you think about it so far. Also, let me know if you'd like to see more videos like this. maybe I could do something similar for when God of War comes out on PC next month. So just let me know. If you enjoyed this video, then please feel free to like and subscribe for more videos on the way soon. Thank you. I'll see you next time.